Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Gonna be back. So do want to go ahead and talk about the other side of the Texas-Michigan game. We just talked Texas. If you missed it, you can go back and listen. But we got to talk about the debacle that was the Michigan Wolverines on Saturday. They lose 31-12. As we just said, it should have been worse. There easily could have been a touchdown on the opening drive. But when I say that I was disappointed in essentially every single thing that I saw for Michigan, probably not a great sign as we go into a tougher Big Ten, where obviously Oregon is on the schedule, USC is on the schedule, and then, of course, Ohio State to end the year. In terms of Michigan, you know what actually stood out to me? So everyone's going to talk about, Davis Warren this, do they have a quarterback, skill position guys, whatever. I was unbelievably disappointed in the Michigan defense, okay? All we've heard all offseason, and by the way, let's even backtrack. Forget the offseason. What was the Michigan program built on under Jim Harbaugh? Blocking, tackling, fundamentals, right? If you watch that game, you looked at that Michigan team, and I know, again, the stats don't totally reflect it. Texas finishes with, quote unquote, only 389 yards of total offense, but again, they let their foot off the gas. That Wink Martindale defense was embarrassing as far as I'm concerned, because again, the entire program was built off blocking and tackling and fundamentals. So what ends up happening in that game? Oh, I don't know. Wink Martindale's trying to all these weird blitzes from every angle. Guys are out of position. The angles that guys are taking on their tackles are a disaster. And so when I was watching that game, I was like, this is a program that was just built on fundamentals, and you have a team where the defense looks completely lost. And I'm not, listen, I watch a ton of NFL, not an analyst. We'll talk about it here and there on the show, but I just bring it up because, when I look at this, this Michigan team, I will tell you, my NFL people were like, dude, Wink Martindale used to be a big deal 4, 5, 6 years ago. His defenses are not good. And that's what I think the most disappointing thing is about Michigan. Because look, Davis Warren, we know, is a project. We know they lost a lot on the offensive line. But the defense was supposed to be able to carry this team, right? This was a defense that brings back multiple future first-round picks, Will Johnson, Mason Graham. We know all that. And so the idea that they literally couldn't do anything to slow down Texas, not a good sign. By the way, Texas finishing 10 of 16 on third down conversions. It felt worse. I think some of those, those third down stops were when the game was largely out of control. So to me, that's the big story. It was Michigan's defense more than it was anything else. With that said, offense wasn't very good. And I think that's where I would be a little concerned if I was Michigan. And it's kind of wild to me, right? Because it was funny. I was texting a buddy about this, but in the lead up to the NFL draft, what was all the big talk? Oh, J.J. McCarthy's no good. J.J. McCarthy's overrated. You see that just having J.J. McCarthy, even if he isn't Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, it completely changes the trajectory of the program and the ceiling of the program. And I know they lost a lot off the offensive line. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Lost a lot off the skill position guys. I get that. But part of it, to me, was just very simply, you had competent quarterback play. And that's the wild part about the Harbaugh era, is that he basically didn't get the quarterback play right for the first 6, 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it was, first six years or so at Michigan. You went from, and Joel Klatt talked about it during the game, but Wilton Spate, Jake Rudock, Shea Patterson, you just can't figure it out. J.J. McCarthy, Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy finally come in. And that's where you're like, okay, we have started to figure things out. And all of a sudden you just have competent quarterback play in J.J. McCarthy, and he was more than competent. I get it. But you look at Michigan now, the defense wasn't good enough. But also part of it, as far as I'm concerned, is that quarterback play was absolutely terrible over the course of the first two games. And we talked about it last week. Listen, The Davis Warren story is incredible. They talked about it during the game. We get it. We get that he has overcome a lot. He's survived cancer. It's an incredible story, all that good stuff. It also doesn't really change the fact that he's probably just not good enough at this level. Okay. You watch the game and he finishes with 22 of 33, 204 yards, 2 interceptions. One of them wasn't really his fault. You know, Colston Loveland has the fumble. I get all that, but it doesn't change the fact that, like, I just don't think he's good enough at quarterback. So it's wild that you had all this time, didn't figure out the quarterback. You get McCarthy. McCarthy leaves, quarterback situation is a problem again. And we talked about it on the preview show the other day of, like, you know, when Davis Warren wins the job, it isn't because he is some incredible, awesome, guy. It was because Alex simply was not good enough in fall camp. They were hoping that he would emerge. They were hoping that he would take the job. He simply does not. And so now all of a sudden you're in a situation where you can't figure out the quarterback situation. You have to go to a former walk-on, and usually that does not work out well. Don't think it helps that right now the O-line just isn't good enough. Part of that might be the Texas defensive front. But, I mean, you go back to even Fresno State. It's not as though they were just moving bodies against Fresno State, about 140 yards rushing against Fresno State. But, again, quarterback play doesn't help. You don't have the quarterback that can make plays with your legs. All of a sudden you load the box. All of a sudden you can't run the football. All of a sudden you see the situation that Michigan in as well. And so I don't want to overreact to just one game, but defense was so disappointing to me. I don't think you have a quarterback. I still think, you know, Edwards and Samaje Morgan and all of these guys are good enough. But again, you got to be able to get them in space. You got to be able to block. You got to be able to do the things that are needed to have success. So with Michigan, I'll be honest, this game does kind of change my feelings on them. Thought they would probably finish 10-2. Maybe Texas is just that good, but thought they would probably finish 10-2. I don't know that I feel that way anymore. Oregon's really good. USC, I think, is better than people think. And if USC plays defense like they did the other day, they're going to give Michigan fits because we know they can move the football. Ohio State to end the year, we know the deal. All of a sudden, I think there's just a lot of games on this schedule that look like, okay, Michigan, it could go either way. I don't know that I feel like they could go either way anymore. So I don't want to spend too much more time talking about this. There's a lot of games on. There's going to be a lot to react to, but just want to share some quick thoughts on the Michigan-Texas game. It was a disaster.